Your Partner in Success Radio is a free business podcast with host Denise Griffitts. It's all about great stories, conversation, and context to help you move your business and life forward with actionable tips and advice from her guest experts. To listen and subscribe, just find us on iTunes, Google Play, or wherever you consume your podcasts.
Good morning and welcome back to your Partner in Success Radio. I am your host, Denise Griffitts, and today we are talking about the B2B Marketing Revolution, how to guarantee ROI and overcome the 12 of them mindset battles with my guest, Lori Turner Wilson. Now, this episode of your Partner in Success Radio is sponsored by Frederick J. Fisher. He is an attorney, a consultant, and a pioneer in liability insurance with over 50 years of experience in professional liability. It's something you don't think you need until you need it. So Fred brings unmatched depth and clarity to a very complex and often understood area of business, helping professionals, educators, and organizations identify risks before they become very costly mistakes. His work spans expert witness testimony, specialized consulting, public speaking, and the kind of real-world insight that only decades in the field can deliver. He's not only an expert, he's the one professionals turn to when the fine print, read that again, fine print matters the most. So to learn more, connect with Frederick J. Fisher on LinkedIn or visit fisherconsultinggroup.com. And my guest today, I mentioned earlier, is Lori Turner Wilson. She is an international best-selling author of the B2B Marketing Revolution, Your Battle Plan for Guaranteed Outcomes. Now, she is not only disrupting the traditional agency model, she's raising the bar entirely. And as the founder of Red Rover Agency, one of only two marketing, I have to think about this, only two full-service B2B marketing agencies in the U.S. to guarantee ROI. She's leading a movement to shift the industry from vague deliverables, those drive me crazy too, to measurable, predictable success. And her message is bold. Her mission is clear. You as a business owner or a marketing leader deserve guaranteed marketing outcomes. And if anyone tells you different, Lori wants you to question that and maybe lovingly move them aside. Good morning, Lori, and welcome to the show. And thank you for sending your book to me. It's on my desk as we speak.
Hi, Denise. Good morning. Great to be here. I've been looking forward to this conversation today.
Me too. We've had to reschedule this a couple of times. And this morning I was like, okay, we got it. We're going to get it done this time. So I'm all excited to hear your voice. But before we get started, would you tell our audience a bit about you and how you like to show up in the world through your work and the impact that you aim to make in the marketing world?
Yeah, I'd be happy to. I started my career actually at the age of 13. I started my first business. It was a dog show, an event of all things, and it was exceptionally well marketed, I would like to say, and turned a tidy profit. And I knew from the age of 13 that marketing would be my passion. I didn't know even what marketing was at the time, but I knew that I loved it. I spent, fast forward quite a bit. I spent the first 15 years of my career in enterprise marketing and communication for several Fortune 500 companies. And so I sat on the client side, where your listeners are. And I had ultimate P&L accountability. And the buck stopped with me when it came to measurably moving the needle on things like incremental gross profit. And I was hiring some of the top 10 largest ad agencies and marketing firms in this country, names that you would know. And I found, Denise, that they were wildly creative. They blew my socks off from an innovation perspective, but they were equally uninterested in metrics that actually mattered, like incremental gross profit. And so trying to drag these agencies into peak performance and accountability was challenging on its best day and agonizing on many. And it finally dawned on me that I should build what I couldn't find and raise the bar in this industry that I've loved from the age of 13 along the way. And in 2006, Red Rover was born, and it's been an absolute labor of love. And I've spent the past 19 years with Red Rover fine-tuning that framework that I used in the Fortune 500 world to create predictable marketing outcomes, refining that framework for small and mid-sized companies that need it most to allow them to compete with much larger competitors. And in the end, landed on a framework that allows us to deliver guaranteed outcomes to our clients. It's called the 12 Battles Framework, but it's also a framework that your listeners can self implement, and my book can guide them in doing that.
And you just said something that I thought was so important that I wrote it down, and that's you're building what you couldn't find. I mean, how many people stop and think about, I can't find it, I can't find it, it's nowhere, but then go, heck, I'll just do it myself.
Well, I think that's most entrepreneurial stories, right? When I jumped out and formed Red Rover, I thought if I could have looked forward 20 years, 19 years where we are today, I would have thought that my industry would have advanced so much more than it has from an accountability front. And I'm disappointed that it hasn't. But this mission that I'm on, this message that I'm sharing is designed, it's called the B2B Marketing Revolution for a reason. It's a revolution, and clients are going to have to lead the way. So my industry expects business owners and marketing leaders and senior executives, they expect you to not ask of them any level of accountability to metrics that actually matter, but I'm encouraging your listeners to do just that.
How do they ask? I mean, what I would think, and I've gone through your book twice now. Oh, and I have to go back just a little bit. In the green room, I was mentioning, because I'm on page 37, Battle 3, I'm jumping around a bit. And I was looking at your bookmark and I went, huh, this bookmark is just brilliant. And I actually made a note to find out where you built it so I can do one from my book that's coming up. And on the back of it, it's got 4 codes. Unlock 50 executive marketing resources, sign up for the newsletter. And I thought that is just brilliant. Tell me what you said in the green room when I noted that.
Well, I said, if I'm not good at marketing, then I've completely missed my calling.
Right. And I went, well, and there it is. Because it's a brilliant piece of marketing. It's right there. It's in the book. I've moved it around a lot, but I never turned it over for some reason. And then it fell on my floor, and there it was. I went, how did I miss that? It's brilliant. So I will be copying you, just so you know.
And I think and readers are a lot of readers are still very tactile. So those inserts I think are really effective. But I wanted to elaborate. You were starting to ask me how do they ask, or maybe why
Yes,
do they
yeah.
ask. And so as I reflect on the agencies I was hiring 19 years ago and the agencies that I know today, it's there's a couple of reasons why agencies don't guarantee their outcomes. And number one is marketing is both an art and a science, and most agencies are run by artists, by creatives, right?
Creatives. I knew that.
Yeah, not the science side, the analytics side of marketing. And the art side of marketing is unpredictable, but the science side has a lot of predictability in it. So most agencies don't guarantee outcomes for 2 reasons. One, they don't have the infrastructure to do it. They aren't large enough to have deep market research capabilities, which is the way you get predictability in your marketing. And two, they don't have the courage and conviction to stand behind those projections. They haven't built the internal infrastructure. They don't hire, fire, reward, incent their team based on ability to achieve outcomes. And you've got to have both of those things. And then lastly, clients aren't expecting it. And until clients start to expect what they deserve in my space, I don't think we're going to see my industry elevate. So, in fairness to my agency peers across the country, if you can believe this, out of 14,000 or so marketing and advertising agencies across the country, 90% of them have 8 or fewer employees. And they couldn't possibly have the market research infrastructure to develop predictability, to get those deep data insights. That's a lot of the reason.
Are you working with any of these people? Do they come to you and say, teach us? How do you do this?
Well, we actually run a boot camp that we can
Ah,
other agencies through, but it's really designed more for companies that want to create their own predictable marketing engine inside of their company. So, we still partner with companies, B2B companies all across this country to create predictable outcomes. But the book is my way of giving back to the world and allowing companies that want to self-implement the opportunity to do that themselves. And the boot camp is 18 hours of basically an MBA in marketing, it's been called before, that will allow your team to create that kind of predictable marketing engine that you need to realize, a visionary's dreams for that organization.
Exactly. And I was mentioning, Lori, that I was on page 37. I keep going back to this page, and I'm going to quote from it. It says, your marketing simply won't work without a compelling value proposition that outlines what you set apart from your competitors, as well as the unique benefits of your product, service, or solution. That shouldn't be difficult to understand, but I think we get so caught up in the weeds that we just don't think it out fully.
Yeah, I think that's right. And we often skip that step. So, value proposition is everything. So, this marketing playbook will work inside of any company with a strong value proposition. But outside of that, this playbook can only be so effective. So, I like to draw this analogy that it gets a lot more expensive to generate marketing leads and grow your business. The cost to acquire a customer gets so much larger when you don't have a strong value proposition. So you have to start with, you know, a value proposition assessment and look at your value proposition compared to all of your competitors and get feedback from the market on what they really think about what you are saying, your stake in the ground, your point of differentiation is. Because with most of the clients that come through our doors, most of those, probably 2/3 of those, haven't yet found that unique value proposition that no other competitor, no other direct competitor is claiming. And so that's really where you start, because marketing gets a whole lot more affordable, as I've said, when you have that in place. And your customers are the secret for finding out what that could be if you haven't already identified one. That's where market research comes into play.
And I was just going to ask you about that. I mean, yes, we have Chat GPT, we have Perplexity, we can do a lot of this kind of poking around using AI. But I love what you just said about your customers, because they will tell you if you ask them, I have found, but you have to ask them. They'll ask you what you're doing right and what you're doing, yeah, it's kind of so. Don't get your feelings hurt. Just listen and do something about it.
Related to that, one of the biggest mistakes, the missteps that I see CEOs and business leaders and marketing executives making is that they believe on some level down deep that no one could know their customer as well as they do because they live, eat, and breathe their business. I get it. I'm a founder. I have a little bit of that in me too. And from a research perspective, that's the kiss of death. They are wonderfully biased and beautifully subjective in all the right ways to passionately drive their company forward. But from a research perspective, you need absolute objectivity, because the way you ask questions, whether it be through interviews or focus groups or surveys, the way you ask questions to your market will bias the results. So whether you hire a market research firm or an agency like ours with market research capabilities, or you go it alone, at least make sure you've got a market research consultant looking over what you're doing to make sure that they remove that bias from the questions, because your marketing results guarantee plan is banking on that objectivity.
Give us, if you can, give us a couple of as ifs, when you're talking about bias, what do you see most?
Well, so when we're talking about your products, for example, or your services, and you're
My perfect service. Yeah,
right,
it's absolutely perfect. Just ask me.
right, and you're asking the market a question like, how much time does my product save you? Well, you've already embedded the thought that your product saves time, and now they're asking under that construct. But you don't know
Oh,
really if your product saves them time or if that's a significant point of differentiation. So, all that bias about what you think you know about you and your customers all comes through in the research. In fact, it's hard not to embed bias in nearly every single question when you're close to it.
well, and that makes sense because I mean, you're thinking like the boss, like the founder. You're not thinking like the person on the other end of the phone or the other end of the screen at all. You know what you know and you want to get that out, I'm guessing. And that's where your bias is going to come in.
That's right. And if you can believe it, I have a full market research team but I look outside for much of that research for my firm because I know I am beautifully biased.
Right. I am too. I look at some of the stuff I'm written and say, oh, that is really good. What does it really mean? And then I have to go back and think about it and rework it. So I never thought about the internal or the unwitting bias. It just never occurred to me. And now I'm looking at everything going, okay, Denise, how does this land?
Well, there's also the this truth that when you ask your customers as a vendor for them, you're asking your customers, why are you not choosing me? Why did you choose to leave us for a competitor? You're only going to get a surface level answer because people are kind. People,
Yeah,
they
yeah.
don't want to tell you that, the real reasons why they're moving on. And often they'll cite price because that's the most conflict avoidant of the answers. But usually there are root causes that you can't see that if you had an outsider looking at this, they would be able to see with clarity and get more candor from the market about what's working and what's not with your products, your services, and your messaging.
And oftentimes it can be just as simple as I don't like you.
Yeah, it can.
Seriously.
It sure can. And that's definitely not information you're going to get
No.
when you're conducting your own research. So again, that objectivity, it's valuable and it can actually allow your marketing strategy to scale in ways you may not even realize.
And that makes perfect sense. So on the title and the mission of the book, Lori, let's start with the title of your book. How did you come up with that, the B2B Marketing Revolution? Because that's a big call. That's a big name.
Yeah, it is. And it's our framework has always had a battle theme to it because this is a battle. Marketing as a profession is not easy. It's so dynamic. Every day, our industry changes in leaps and bounds. Just think about the impact AI has had on our industry over the last year or two. So, the revolution is about how you battle your way through to predictable outcomes. It's also about how you would have to expect more. And you said something early on in this discussion that reminded me of this. I have a belief that clients that run teams that run marketing teams, they need to defy the apathy that my industry expects of them and decide that they deserve to achieve guaranteed outcomes, and anyone standing in their way will be lovingly removed.
Right, right. And they should be. I mean, if you can't expect what you're paying for, why are you still there?
It's right. And marketing, for some reason, we've accepted marketing to be this ambiguous bucket of investment that we don't really know what we get out of it, but we know what we're getting out of our operational investment and our sales investment. And I don't know why we don't look at marketing in that way. And it's probably related to the complexity of it. But I'm here to tell you that you can predict your marketing outcomes within a reasonable margin of error if you invest in the market research necessary to develop the customized strategy that then can allow you to have predictable marketing ROI each quarter of the year. That's possible, but you can't cut corners and you've got to execute all of the 12 battles. And by the way, those 12 battles, that 12 battles framework I've mentioned, those are the 12 battles and mindset that every CEO and marketing leader must overcome in order to create true predictability and scalability in their marketing engine.
Well, can we go through some of those battles? I mean, I love number three. I'm not sure why, I just do. But can you go ahead and tell us, well, for starters, why you created these? I think we already know, but let's just kind of peek at one or two of the battles that most business leaders really struggle with, or more. I mean, we can talk about all 12 if you like.
Well, let's start with Battle 3 because I know that's resonated with you and it resonates with a lot of leaders that read this book. It's that you champion market research as a do or die investment. There's no more option to just develop a marketing strategy based on gut instinct. It needs to be driven by what the market wants, what the market expects, what the market needs, where their pain is. And so Battle 3 walks you through the research protocol that you need to implement in order to create this strategy that has predictability in it. And there's you mentioned it on the bookmark, but But I'll share with your listeners. There's a web page that we can go to that's set up just for your listeners, and there's a place on there toward the bottom that gives you more than 50 free tools and resources that they can use to implement everything they see in the book, and that includes sample surveys and sample stakeholder interview guides, customer interview guides that you can use to at least get you started with your market research protocol. So they can find that at marketingresultsguarantee.com/podcast.
It's in the show notes. I was there this morning poking around. Um, and I'm on page 39, sample value proposition comparison grid. And that's so important. You've got price, quality, customer service, innovation, brand recognition, product range, technology. That's a toughie for some people. User experience, customization, and after sales support. And I understand what you're saying. You can't miss a single one of these because
That's
that's
right.
all part and parcel of what you're offering.
Yeah, and I think that's the biggest takeaway maybe today is that this isn't an a la carte pick items that you want to execute and still get the desired outcomes at the end of the day. It needs to be a comprehensive strategic effort, and it starts with this research protocol.
It does. So 12 battles, what's another one that people really go, okay, I get this one. This is, you said three resonates. It really resonated with me, obviously, but are there other chapters that people just go, okay, I'm here and this is wonderful?
Yeah, one of the favorites of them is Battle 12, which is you inspire your team to stand behind their MROI projections. And what I mean by that is it is you have to as a leader, you have to inspire your team to do what is not easy work. This marketing work is not easy, and there needs to be a lot of support, and you need to have a growth mindset and not make your team afraid of failure. You need to, fail quick and move on and pivot, and that's part of what we do. But it's also about your team having the conviction to stand behind their projections by having their compensation tied to outcomes. And sometimes this is not popular, and it's a scary conversation to have when you're a when you're a marketing person, because this is not usual. But usually companies don't have the type of research and strategy building protocol that allows them to have confidence in those outcomes. But once you do, I believe that all employees should have at least 50% of their compensation in the form of variable pay tied to those quarterly marketing ROI projections. And so I also believe that your agency should have skin in the game. They should be willing to guarantee those outcomes for you. So whether you're building an internal team or you're partnering with an agency, or what's often the case, a hybrid of the two, everyone needs to be compensated based on actual return on investment. So we're all rowing in the same direction.
And that does make sense. And when you say MROI, you're talking about marketing ROI?
That's right. That's right.
Okay. I was thinking, I think that's what she means by that. Okay, keep going because this book to me is fascinating. I have read it at least twice and I've got sticky notes all over it. So there's one question that I had. It's on page 208, existing strategy optimization projections. Let's talk about that a bit.
So when you think about how to put together your marketing ROI or MROI projections, in the book there's a half dozen or so ways that you can put those together. And so it can be based on your historical performance. So let's say that we see an optimization opportunity to better optimize our email campaigns. We're not sitting on the right day of week or the right time of day. And we know we have confidence because we've run a small test that if we shift to better timing, that we'll see a 10% bump in our performance. So that's how you look back at your historical performance to decide what your future marketing projections will be. But there are other ways to test that as well, such as um, I like to call it incrementality testing. So you can decide that that you're going to make a minor modification. You're going to put more in the budget for a 90-day period of time to see what kind of impact it will have at the end of the day. And that allows you, because you've done it at scale over a short period of time, instead of spending $1,000, you might be spending $5,000 in that quarter. You're able to see if that strategy can scale in the way that you think it can. So that chapter is all about what is the science behind how you create those MROI projections.
Got it. And that leads me to my next observation is that you're a big advocate for holding marketing accountable to real business outcomes. And you just touched on that a bit. And it's not just vanity metrics. So, what KPIs should business to business leaders actually be tracking? You mentioned newsletters. That's important. And how do you recommend that they tie marketing performance directly to business growth? And again, you touched on that a bit, but can you expand on that?
I can. Yeah, there are three big metrics that I encourage your listeners to make sure that they're looking at on a monthly, quarterly, annual basis. So yes, you can look, as you said, you can look at channel specific metrics all day long, right? Email marketing, engagement and open rates and conversion rates and dollars generated. But at a more macro level, so think CEO level, owner level, there are three metrics that I'd want your listeners to look at. Number one is MROI. And that MROI may seem really simple to calculate, but the devil's in the details, right? Often with MROI, there are hidden costs that aren't included. So this should include your agency costs. It should include the payroll of your marketing team. It should include all of your out-of-pocket ad spend. All of that should be included in it. And when you, instead of taking those costs as a factor of revenue, you want to take those costs as a factor of gross profit, because it doesn't matter if they're driving top line if it's not profitable to you at the end of the day. So not bottom line profit, but gross profit. And so that's how I want your team calculating MROI. And then the other two metrics are cost to acquire a customer. You should be able to look at what is your total sales and marketing investment, and you divide that by how many customers you've brought in over whatever time period you're looking at. You could look at it by quarter or by year, and that tells you what it's costing you to bring in a new customer. You want to constantly be working to drive that cost down. And then you need to look at the lifetime value of a customer, and you want to see this number growing like your ROI number. So lifetime value is if a customer normally, if we normally generate, let's say, $100,000 a year in gross profit off a customer, and they stay with us on average for 5 years, the lifetime value of that relationship is $500,000 in gross profit. You'd be willing to probably spend quite a bit to generate $500,000 in revenue. So instead of looking at a cost to acquire a customer as only the single year's gain from a customer, you want to look at the lifetime value of that so you're making smart decisions. So those are the big three that I would focus on, Denise.
Perfect. And you emphasize, yeah, and I'm moving now to sales and marketing because there's a big difference. And I think some people, I didn't understand this for the longest kind of time. Sales, marketing goes in the bank account, all good. I wasn't tracking much of anything. I was just going, oh, good, I can pay the cat food today. Like, I'm good to go. But let's talk about aligning sales and marketing because you emphasize alignment between those teams, the sales teams and the marketing teams. And that's something we hear often, but few seem to really nail it. I didn't. So, in your experience, what gets in the way of true alignment and what does that actually look like when those two departments are working in sync?
I the reason that I know that this gap exists is because in every one of those Fortune 500 roles I was in, marketing and sales were siloed, where they were in different camps with different perspectives.
Right.
And often,
That's what I was trying to say, and you said it much better.
but marketing is pointing the finger at sales and concerned that they aren't converting enough of the leads they're bringing in, right? And sales is pointing the finger at marketing, saying the leads aren't qualified enough. And so there's a common trend in a lot of companies today where sales and marketing rolls up to the same leadership so that you that finger pointing stops. But you can also just simply make sure that sales and marketing have similar compensation structures and similar KPIs so that everyone again is fighting together to drive ROI at the end of the day. So that's why it exists. But we also, my team looks at Red Rover, we look at sales and marketing together because if we're truly an ROI firm, when only results matter at the end of the day, if the sales team can't close the business we're bringing in because it's not the right kind of business, then we're not achieving ROI. So we're looking at marketing and sales messages to make sure they're in complete alignment. We're checking lead quality with the sales team to make sure that we don't need to fine tune the marketing strategy to get better qualified leads in. And then we're also thinking about marketing from a sales enablement perspective, which is a fancy way of saying marketing can support the sales process And in some B2B companies, it's a sales play and marketing plays a supporting role. So marketing can be there to embed creative marketing elements into the sales touch point plan. So instead of just making outbound calls to try to get someone to pick up the phone, marketing sends a creative email that has a video testimonial or a case study, or maybe it's a one-to-one recorded video for that prospect that goes directly to them. There are dozens of ways marketing can support the sales process. And for most B2B companies, they really need to be interlocked pretty closely.
And they really do. And I'm guessing, this is just a wild guess, but I'm guessing that once they start working together and they understand how each team actually functions and what they bring to the table, I'm wondering if there's some crossover. If you have people say, look, I'm a creative, but I really like what sales is saying. Can I help over there as well?
Well, exactly. And you'll see in a really well-functioning sales and marketing team, you'll see marketing joining often salespeople on sales calls because they've got an additional perspective that they can bring to the table. They want to be a part of that process. It also really helps if marketing shadows the sales team so that they understand what obstacles prospects are giving them and where the pitch is not effective because they can go back and fine tune the marketing engine, all of that messaging to make sure it's overcoming some of those obstacles before a sales rep ever gets involved.
And here's the thing, and I know you've seen this. I've seen it. I'm a web developer by trade, and I've seen too many times where a client of mine says, we're in trouble. Sales promised something we cannot deliver. That's a big no-no, but they didn't know how to, I didn't know how to help them fix it. I would have, had I known better, I would have said, go talk to Lori. But is that still a real issue, or people getting better educated about sales and marketing working together?
It's still a pretty common issue, and usually it's a factor of there aren't guardrails for the sales team to
All
know
right.
what they can offer and how far they can go and where they can bend and flex and where they can't. And so it's not the sales rep's fault. It's simply a lack of clear expectations. So a sales and marketing leader, or if it's divided, a sales leader really needs to outline, here's your boundaries. We've got this amount of price wiggle room. We've got this amount of wiggle room in our service delivery commitment, but you can't go beyond that. And I think if you set clear expectations, salespeople want to line up with expectations of the company. They just need to know what that looks like.
Exactly. And I think what you just said about, deliverables and the dates, I think that's the biggest thing I've seen.
Yeah,
What they're promising may not be, all that horrendous or difficult, but it's not going to be done 2 weeks from now. So let's back that down.
right.
Got it. So on the outcomes first mindset, this phrase comes up a lot in your book, outcomes first. What does that really mean?
Yeah, that's a great question. And it means beginning with the end in mind. So let me talk you through the process of how Red Rover arrives at a strategy for our clients, a strategy that can have predictable outcomes. And I think that will illustrate this point. So when we go through all of the market research protocol outlined in the book, we then put that entire the summary of all of that research in front of 10 marketing specialists on our team that represent the most common 10 specialties that B2B and really B2C companies need to be executing in order to have a full scale marketing strategy. So think as a search engine optimization or SEO specialist and branding specialist and email marketing specialist and trade show and event specialist. And there's 10 specialties represented in the room. So they review all of those data insights and then they come to what we call a war room strategy debate. They're going to come to this war room with the top three strategies within their specialty they believe are most likely to scale this company in a measurable way. They're going to be prepared to pitch those. They're going to show the ROI projections on those strategies. And then they're going to hit what we call the firing squad, which is they're going to answer 20 questions that allow us to know that this is a fully vetted strategy, that it will scale in the way that they believe it will, that the ROI math is sound and is not flawed. And so when they're sitting down to develop those strategies, Denise, they're beginning with the end in mind. They know that our goal is to grow this company. Maybe it's by $10 million over the next year, or $1 million the next year, or 500,000, whatever it is. What are the marketing strategies that are going to bring that to life? That's central in their mind as they begin with the end in mind.
How many people, when you first started this particular way of doing business, how many people just said, I'm going to have a heart attack? Or,
You
you
mean,
know, I mean, how many people did you lose? I guess is my real question. Because that sounds terrifying. It really does, unless or until you are deeply motivated to create this.
well, if you're talking about inside of the agency, it's
Yeah.
actually a lot of fun. We execute it with a Hunger Games theme, and there's a lot of laughter, and it's a no clients invited conversation because I need my team to have no filter on. I need
Oh,
them
okay.
to speak their minds and say what needs to be said in the room, and it's actually a lot of fun. But we allow our team to shadow someone in the war room before they step fully into one of those seats because you have to really see it to understand how it works, and we don't want them to be surprised or caught off guard.
Yeah, or saying, "Oh, I want my mom. I gotta go now." I can almost see it's like, I didn't sign up for this. But I would guess that based on what you're telling me and sharing with our audience, that people who are very, very passionate about what they're doing in marketing and in sales, they're going to do whatever you ask them to do that's within reason, obviously, because they are working from the end result
Well,
and they
we
understand that.
It's true. And we hire people with that fight, that desire to win. That get that thrill of winning for our clients at the end of the day. And in fact, we do this because we practice what we preach. There are performance bonuses for our team when we overachieve by more than 10% a client's goals that we've set for them. And so that keeps everybody focused on the end goal. But yeah, I think we naturally filter candidates for those particular qualities.
I would imagine you would have to. I mean, it's not something you can just hire the person that has the best resume. They have to really understand what you're doing.
Well, it also takes an analytical mindset,
Right, right.
and in our
That's the
field,
science, isn't it?
that's the science, yeah. And in our field, because I get, hundreds of resumes a month from marketing professionals, in our field, a full 2/3 of the resumes I get, we do this assessment for our candidates where we can learn what their natural traits are. And a full 2/3 of those folks are not analytically inclined. They're more artistic and more creative, which you can be both, by the way. But they're missing some of those analytical natural traits that allow them to think about everything we do from an ROI perspective at the end of the day.
And see, I would be missing those traits. I'm missing them now. I'm telling you. And I'm listening, going, I wish I could do that. And I'm thinking what you're telling us is that we can kind of learn a lot of that.
It can be learned. You need a leader who maybe naturally has those instincts, and then they can teach those qualities to others. And there's a lot of fear, there's a lot of fear around standing behind projections in our field because, as I said before, the field is so dynamic. Google changes their algorithm almost 365 days a year. So, an SEO or search engine optimization specialist whose job is to make sure our clients rank well with Google has to do that and only that because to staying on top of that Google algorithm change is a full-time job. So when your team is scared of getting behind these projections and feeling anxious about it, it could be because you're asking too much. You're asking them to be a jack of all trades in an industry where that doesn't work. Everyone on your team needs to have a single specialty within marketing, or they don't have any hope of staying up to date with it.
And I'm glad you brought that up. When I started my web development company 20 years ago and my podcast 17 years ago, I've been doing all of this for a while, but nobody taught me anything. There was nobody to teach me anything. I had to just go do what I wanted to do. And I found out fairly quickly because I have a core team that works with me on web development, on, just the different parts of everything that goes into web development and podcasting. And I can do it all. Should I do it all? Oh, heck no. And it dawned on me because I knew I was really ticking them off and I didn't know why I was ticking them off. I was getting what we would call malicious compliance. They would do what I asked them, but that was it. They weren't offering anything. I could tell that they weren't happy with me. So I got on the phone with all of them. I said, listen, I recognize that I'm basically just being a boss. I'm saying, do what I tell you, nobody gets hurt. That never works. And what you just said really resonated because I had to figure this out, that each one of these people has a specialty and they stay on it. Now, can I catch up with them? Probably. Do I want to? No. I've got a whole heck of a lot of other things to do. So I always hire people who are better than me without fail.
When you're a small company, you have to have jack of all trades, right? That's that everybody has to wear multiple hats, but you found, as most companies do, as you grow, you get to the point where you can put specialists in place. And
Right,
the challenge for small and lower middle market companies is that path. It it the the jack of all trades approach is not effective from a marketing perspective, but you can't cost justify hiring the 10 full-time specialists like I have in the room for our war rooms.
right.
That's where an agency partnership makes sense. And so an agency can allow you to buy fractional time. I need 10 hours a week of an SEO specialist, and I need 5 hours a week of an email specialist. It's going to allow you to just buy what you need it in the months that you need them, and allow you to flex your marketing strategy to adapt to the market without having to immediately go back and go through a long 90 day or longer recruiting process. So I think agencies make the most sense when you're on a small business or the lower end of middle market, say up to 25 to 50 million in revenue, because still it doesn't make sense to hire full time even up to that level. So if one of your listeners is thinking, do I need agency or not? That's about the right range where an agency makes a whole lot of sense.
It really does. And, once you get out of your own way, that's helpful too.
It is always
So,
in life.
I mean, we exhaust ourselves. I mean, I was sharing with you, I don't sleep a whole lot anywhere. Anyway, it's not one of my better skills. But every once in a while, I think, I've got to get some rest. And that's when I realize I'm back to my old ways. I'm doing it myself. It's just easier to jump in and do it myself. Well, no, not really. Because now you just wasted 10 minutes or an hour on something that you should have handed off.
I think that's a common symptom of entrepreneurship, right? So
Oh,
my
yeah.
My father, I watched him throughout his career carry the weight of company performance. I mean, you know it, Denise. It's, you need to make payroll, and you need to grow and open up the jobs and the growth opportunities that you said.
Right.
And I watched him carry that weight his whole life, and he tried not to bring that home to his family, but we could see it, right? We're close enough to him that we could see it. And so I think the sooner that you can let go of that, the superhero complex that I've got to be everything to everyone, and to your point, get in your lane and do what only you, the founder, can do, the more
Right.
the more likely you are to scale.
Yeah, I had to get out of my own way big time.
Yeah.
I mean, because look, I'm a highly committed introvert. I'm self-taught. I have a computer science degree, but I am self-taught about practically everything. And I fight with my nervous system. She's not the boss of me. It makes for an uneasy personality sometimes. Even me going, Denise, settle down. Take a seat. Just take a seat. But once you realize that you don't have to do everything, and honestly, you should not do everything, because you can't be an expert at every single thing that needs to happen. What you're talking about makes perfect sense. Find an agency, find a really good virtual assistant if that's what it takes. And by the way, if you're going to hire somebody, train them. They don't read minds.
I think early in my career, I don't think I know, I had ego. I had a lot of ego, and I thought I could do everything. And that founder syndrome, and I was the founder bottleneck, that the traditional founder bottleneck that
Yep.
you hear about.
I've used that word. I was and can continue to be the bottleneck. No question about it.
Well, I eventually learned that I could hire people a lot smarter than me
Yeah.
to do the things that I'm not naturally good at, and they would be 10 times better than I ever dreamed of it. Well, and that was really the tipping point for my agency, Red Rover, and the beginning of our growth, our national expansion, was me letting go of ego and realizing I'm not the best person to do this by a mile, but I can certainly hire people a lot better at me at doing that. And that relates to your point of hiring an agency. When you're just building your repeatable marketing engine, you want the best experts possible implementing that to show you the way, to show you the path so you don't waste money. And one of my favorite statistics is that we've measured a handful of statistics, Denise, across the whole 300 or so clients we've worked with in the 19 years we've been in business. And one of those statistics is what percentage of their marketing budget was wasted due to lack of sufficient market research. And that number is 60% of their budget.
Are you
And
kidding?
and the way we know it's right, in the early days, we used to turn off the investment to those 60% of the strategies that the research told us would not be paying off for them. And we would wait the length of their sales cycle to see was there any decline in sales whatsoever, and generally no decline whatsoever. So I would argue that most of your listeners that run companies or run divisions, marketing divisions, they're probably wasting about 60% of their investment if they don't have a comprehensive research protocol in place driving their decisions about where to put money.
And you mentioned that before, and apparently it's very, very important. So how can people come to you and ask you to research for them? Do they learn how to do it? What do we do? I mean,
Yeah.
how do we do this?
Well, it depends on if you want to DIY it or you want to hire the outside experts. So first I'll tell you, if you can't afford to hire an agency like ours, I would at least do it yourself because some research, even if it's biased, is better than no research. So the book takes you through the whole playbook and how to execute that. And then we've got boot camps that you can learn that your listeners can learn about at marketingresultsguarantee.com/podcast. There's boot camps on there. And there's a discount code. If you enter podcast, the word podcast is the discount code. You can get a discount on a boot camp, which is that 18 hours of training on how to implement what's in the book if you need a bit of a hand. Or if you want to outsource the whole thing, you can hire an agency like ours, but just make sure that your agency has deep market research capabilities, that the strategy vetting process is exhaustive and not one person sitting in a room imagining what could be. Those would be the two critical factors I'd look at. And there's actually a resource that you can find on this landing page that I mentioned that will give you 20 questions to ask your agency partner to see if they're worthy of having your business.
Got it. You've got some great success stories. Can you touch on one or two of those? I'm on page 183, Skyward Bound.
Well, my one of my favorite success stories is a client that is a manufacturing client who had a serious, they grew organically. It was a family-run company, founder-led. They grew organically through relationships, sales-based relationships and referrals, but they executed marketing, but it didn't have a repeatable marketing engine. And their marketing leader, their director of marketing left, and they came to us and said, we want to hire Red Rover to do this. And so for the first year, we did not implement the research and strategy building project, the exhaustive process that we normally do for our clients. They weren't quite ready for that. They wanted to just get in and begin executing. And out of the gate, we were delivering a 10-to-1 ROI for them within the industry vertical where everyone knew them, which is why that they earned that 10-to-1 ROI because it's a lot less costly to generate business among a market that already knows you. So we're a year in, and they said, okay, now we're ready for a growth optimization plan, or we call it a GO plan for short, which is that research and strategy building project. So we go through this project and we uncover there's a vertical that is counter cyclical. If you want to go into economic, nerd out with me for a minute on economics, it's counter cyclical to the industry where everybody knows them. Because this industry is when it's up, their other industry is down, but they've always got one industry that is doing well. And this founder wanted to transact this company within a few years. To be able to do that, you need consistent revenue. You can't have down times. You can't have bad years when you're looking to transact. And so we had conversations with them about what it would look like if we deployed a marketing strategy to that new market, what it would cost. And we were projecting, Denise, a 2 or 3 to 1 ROI, which, by the way, most companies would be thrilled to have, but this client was used to 10-to-1. And the reason that they didn't want to make the move is because they thought if I can get 10-to-1 business, why would I ever pay for 2-to-1 business? But the problem is that new market, they didn't know them. It's going to take
Oh.
more advertising, more marketing to get
Right, right.
to actually pick up the phone and want to have a conversation with the sales team. So it's more expensive. So we were going to make sure that revenue is always on the incline, no matter what's happening in the economy. And then we were also going to expand awareness among a whole new market. And they finally decided to allow us to move forward. And then I guess about 6 months, maybe 9 months later, COVID hit. And this company said, this is a time we recognize that this is a time to be brave and to lean into marketing when everybody else is watching cash flow. Because if we do that, we know we can build share, which is exactly what I believe in. This company grew so much in their existing market and the new market during COVID and the year or two afterwards that they transacted far sooner than the founder projected for far more than he ever anticipated. And the marketing engine was a huge part of that. Not exclusive. The sales team was also phenomenal. But I think at the end, we were generating about 90% of their leads. So that's what's possible when you have a founder with courage, you believe in the power of research, and you hire the right people to execute your marketing strategy.
And I'm so glad you used the word courage because I had just written that down. And COVID, there was a lot going on. People were just retracting. They were saying, oh, I can't market. I can't do anything. They were terrified. And you shouldn't be doing business when you're terrified.
And well, it goes to you need to have a working capital needs to be strong so that when
Right.
the unthinkable happens, you can have the courage. You have the financial backing to have the courage. And yeah, it's a courage is a quality that I interview for. Courage is a quality that I look for in the clients that we're onboarding. I'm vetting clients, knowing that that's a requirement of partnership with Red Rover because we want to win at the end of the day. And some of the moves we're going to make are going to take courage.
I can imagine. On raising the bar in the marketing industry, you've made it very clear that this book isn't just about strategy, it's about raising standards across the industry, not just in your company, but across the industry. So, Lori, what inspired you to write this now, and what kind of change are you hoping to spark among agencies and the clients they serve? It seems to me that you're in a leadership position.
There comes a point in your time when the individual wins are just far less important than the impact that you leave on the world. And that's really where I am in my career. Yes, we'll work with B2B companies that want to hire us to grow, but more importantly, I want to arm B2B company leaders, small and mid-sized leaders like my father, because there's a desire to help companies like him, like entrepreneurs like him and companies like his. My father passed about 17 years ago. So there's this underneath it all, there's this desire to help entrepreneurs like him realize their vision. So it's so much more than just growing Red Rover. It's really more about arming anybody, even if they want to DIY this, to to be able to execute a marketing engine that allows them to compete with much larger competitors with far greater resources, which they can do because market research has become so much more affordable. So when I started the agency 19 years ago, it really took larger companies to be able to afford the market research protocol because it was so expensive and labor intensive. But think about all the advancements in data analytic tools and AI that have made this so much more efficient for us to execute. It's a 75-day project and it is a accessible price point for companies of any size. So whether it's us or anyone you work with, market research is worth the investment.
And that's not something that most people think about, is it? I mean, we're so busy being creatives. I'm a creative. I didn't know it for the longest kind of time, but I am. And I really didn't know. I had no clue at all. And, we think we're either one or the other, but not both. But that's just not so.
It's not so. And, we've been trained to believe that this type of research is expensive. And there's not a lot of communication out in the market about how much these costs have come down. I love to see the smaller players compete with the big boys because the big boys have remained the big boys for so long because they have this type of infrastructure and capability internally. And now a small business owner can actually execute this and compete with those big companies in a far greater way.
How so?
Well, so it used to be that if market research wasn't affordable, you are throwing darts at the dartboard with your
Well,
strategy.
yeah.
Yeah.
And I've been known to do that. Did it yesterday.
Yeah. I mean, that's the primary reason. If you can't afford to hire the team and you think it's too expensive to outsource, then your option is to do nothing or to do something and just see if it pays off. And that's where that 60% of waste comes in. But your market research protocol is probably going to cost you less than a single year's waste.
That I hadn't even thought about that, but you're right. And you've been pointing that out, and I hadn't put it together. Interesting. Okay, so where can our listeners grab a copy of the B2B Marketing Revolution? Listen, y'all, I have it on my desk. It belongs in your entrepreneurial library. And how can they connect with you to learn more about you and your work?
So it's available on Amazon. Just search for the B2B Marketing Revolution, and then they can go to marketingresultsguaranteed.com/podcast to uncover all kinds, more than 50 free resources. And there's 2 special offers on that page that you'll get a significant discount on if you use the code podcast.
I was there this morning and I'm heading back this afternoon. It's already in my schedule. Lori, listen, thank you so much for joining me today and for bringing such clarity and conviction to the conversation around B2B marketing. And I keep writing this down. You said it a couple of times, and for some reason I've written it down multiple times. Repeatable marketing system. So whoever's listening, go back and figure that out.
It's a pleasure to be here, Denise. I knew I was looking forward to this conversation for a reason.
Oh, and we've been working at it, and I was like, oh, here we are. We're here. We're here. I was so glad to hear your voice. Lori, thank you so much. You've given us so much to think about, from the mind shifts needed to drive predictable outcome, which I would have never thought of, to be honest, until I met you and read your book, to how we as business leaders can stop settling for vague results and start demanding accountability. I love that. So do you have any final thoughts you'd like to share?
Just demand what you deserve from your marketing partner and stop settling for less.
There you go. Well, listen, everybody, for those of you who are listening, if you're tired of marketing that feels like a black box, or worse, a guessing game, the B2B Marketing Revolution is your next must read. When I tell you it belongs on your entrepreneurial bookshelf, I'm not kidding. It's practical, research backed, and honestly, it's a bit of a wake up call. There were a couple of times, I've got sticky notes all over it. I will not mark up a book. My librarian from my childhood would rear up and get me with a ruler, but I've got sticky notes all over it. And there were a couple of times I caught myself, Lori, grabbing my stomach going, oh, I didn't know that. Yeah, I actually went and grabbed my Tums bottle because I knew that there was going to be some things there that I didn't want to know because I should have already known them. And I felt a little bit embarrassed, to be honest.
Are you telling me we should package the book with Tums?
Yeah. Make sure you put a code on the back of it, though, so people can go to the podcast page. So anyway, you can find the book on Amazon, and I highly encourage you to connect with Lori online. Follow her insights. Go to that page that she's mentioned a couple of times. I'll get her to say it again. Challenge your own assumptions and start expecting more. Start demanding more from your marketing efforts. Lori, one more time.
Marketingresultsguaranteed.com/podcast. And you can,
Podcast.
there's a contact form there where you can reach out to me.
Excellent. Well, listen, everybody, until next time, thank you for being part of Your Partner in Success Radio. Be sure to subscribe, share this episode with your team, and keep raising the bar together. And go get this book. Lori, thank you so much.
My pleasure.
Get your voice heard. If you would like to launch your own far-reaching podcast, contact Denise Griffitts at yourofficeontheweb.com and go to the podcast tab.